Numbers by Joanne Corey, and it's performed tonight by Sharon Rankins-Burd. Joanne Corey is a poet who lives in Vestal with her family. She is grateful that her husband is now retired, so he will be home when the next nor'easter hits, instead of away on a business trip, as he was in 2017 when this poem was written. She invites you to visit joannecorey.com for more information about her work and to read her eclectic blog, Top of JC's Mind.
The forecast was for an inch overnight, with 5 to 8 to follow. Then 1 to 3 with 6 to 9. I rose before the daylight saving delayed dawn to find a foot of snow already down, consequence of a more westerly track plus a stall. My strategy, born of long ago New England winters, to clear the overnight accumulation from the driveway, then shovel every few inches, add in the front walk and path to the mailbox, as strength allows. A good plan, but overly ambitious for a 5 foot 1.5 inch 56-year-old alone with a shovel, contending with the wake of snowplows and snow falling at 2 or 3 or 4 inches an hour. 27 inches by 5 o'clock and still snowing. 7 bouts of shoveling. 12,091 Fitbit steps. And 2 blessed assists from the neighbor's snowblower yield a driveway cleared to a road under a countywide travel ban. A path to a mailbox that may be filled with today's mail tomorrow, weather permitting.
Our next poem is The Batman Morning, written and read by Robert Harlow. This poem is dedicated to Robert's mother. She's 103 years old and loves the Write Out Loud videos from 2024 and 2025 when he read poems at the event. She has her friends in hospice watch them as well. She wants everyone to know that Robert's new book of poems, W/Reckless Love, is out now. And she wants everyone here to buy it. The Batman photo was taken yesterday morning, offering proof that snow was still in Robert's yard mid-April.
As an added treat, here he is. And he articulates, see, wave to the people. Batman Morning. Before I tell you how I found Batman under a porch I had been hired to rebuild, I have to tell you that I didn't have my reading glasses on when I misread the titles of 2 poems by a well-known poet listed in the table of contents of a well-known poetry journal, at least in some circles, that is. Misty vision caused me to see what was written as the Batman and Morning, and made me remember the encounter one morning under a row house porch. It's times like these and jobs like these that make me wonder how I ended up here, 150 miles from the sea, where I used to build houses in Plymouth. Now I'm crawling under porches, missing the ocean more and more, the deeper under the porch I have to go to see what needs mending or replacing, what might just need bandages or major surgery. And there he was, all 3 inches of him, this small, actionless action figure, limbs still intact, still articulating when I tried them out, somewhat dirty from lying there for who knows how long, before being resurrected, dusted off, and put in one of the pouches of my tool belt. And there he stayed, forgotten for a week or so, until the day I cleaned out the pouches, and out he tumbled, embarrassingly graceless, a little more worse from a little more wear. I think this now capeless, caped crusader must have forgotten how to use the baby bat pole I always make sure to include in my tool belt each day before heading out to make noise with hammers and nails and power tools. I glued him to the dashboard of my truck in all his plastic molded glory, where he still sits, well, I brought him in tonight anyway. He still sits guarding and guiding me in my travels as I try to make things that are wrong with wood right and true to their nature, restoring them to their former glory, so that anyone who passed by wouldn't know anything had changed. I'm guessing that whoever put Batman under the porch must have had a reason for doing so, believing he is still there, almost always in the dark or semi-dark, which seems to be where he mostly dwells according to the comic book and Hollywood. And because Batman almost never goes to the ocean, but because he is much too busy even here in an upstate junior Gotham City, he cannot stop to help just one man row his boat back to his increasingly lonely shore, where he longingly remembers sitting every pleasing day of spring and summer on a beautiful and nautically enhanced seaside porch, a cooling pitcher of lemonade always near at hand, and might also explain why on this otherwise shiny and lovely Batman morning, I'm beginning to feel I'm just like the boatman who is in mourning for all the things that have come to pass, for being so alone, so far away from home, and so mournfully far away from the sea. Thank you.
Our next poem is Attersee by Lynne Kemen. It's read tonight by Joan Badgley. Lynne Kemen's full-length book of poetry, Shoes for Lucy, was published by SCE Press in 2023. Her chapbook, More Than a Handful, appeared with Woodland Arts Editions in 2020. She is a nominee for a Pushcart Prize, and her work is anthologized in The Memory Palace, an ekphrastic anthology, Ekphrastic Editions 2024, Seeing Things and Seeing Things Too, Woodland Arts 2020 and 2024. Lynne is an editor and interviewer for Blue Mountain Review. She lives in Franklin, New York.
Attersee, green lake water, the ripples moving like daubs of paint in the late afternoon. The hotel is a revision of my earlier imagination. It mirrors something from 30 years ago. The porch is mangled, as is the garden. We are here, all four of us, which rarely happens now. My sisters wear the same jeans they wore at 20, or they try to. They borrow my cardigans, asking first this time. The dock holds us the way it did. Our legs dangle over the water that shows four faces back, each of us looking at our own.
Next, we have a piece of narrative nonfiction by Helen Truszkowski, Game Boy versus the Zambian Bush, No Competition, performed by Sharon Rankins-Burd. Helen Truszkowski has been a published writer and photographer for close to 40 years. Born and raised a Brit, she has toured the globe with 2 sons and a dog or 2, writing, snapping, and presenting for TV, movies, guides, and publications worldwide. These days, you're more likely to cite Helen locally in her classic green Land Rover with comical ducks and Hector in tow. Helen also features in Fenimore's full-cast audiobook of Charles Dickens' classic, A Christmas Carol. Her reading tonight was selected to appear in Brat Guides, new publication around the world in 65 years, a travel anthology of 101 first-hand stories penned by acclaimed writers.
Utokira kuti, demanded the first. The next in line charged forward. Una zaka ziganti? An incoming toddler stared at us with dinner plate eyes, opened her mouth, and screamed, "Not your average welcome." George came to my aid. He smiled. The crowd of children smiled. Then Mouthing that miracle child lingo that transcends all other tongues, the herd circled away with George at its core, saved by a 6-year-old. I don't know when it first occurred to me to take my son into the Zambian bush to stay in a village. It might have been after the Christmas holidays when he informed me that his friend Ben has a radio and a CD player and a TV and a telephone in his room. So when can I get my own telephone, Mom? Maybe it was the cumulative effect of a year spent listening to George and his fellow classmates measure their worth in Harry Potter merchandise. I stood alone, eyeing the sunset's pink flush, listening to Hippo vociferously reaffirm their claim to a stretch of river. Turtle doves warbled, crickets rubbed shoulders. A football fashioned from newspaper and elastic bands reached my sandaled feet. I'm no David Seaman, so I let it pass. Cue the stampede and whoops of delight. Inde, inde, inde! George was evidently making headway with the Nyanjan patois. Just 20 minutes earlier, we had abandoned our preconceptions and inhibitions on the tarmac as we drove onto a trail sliced through maize and cotton fields bound for Webby's Village, our home for 2 nights. With encouragement from Joe and Robin Pope, possibly the best-known safari operators this side of the Zambezi, the villagers first offered a few inquisitive visitors bed and breakfast Kunda style some 4 years ago. The take-up has been surprisingly slow. You might figure it takes a certain type of traveler to venture here, one that values personal discovery above prescribed experience, adventure over passive predictability of habitual holidays. Highbrow it all you like. Truth is, I'm just a mum, and George is just a schoolboy. And the invitation to talk and to touch and to be touched by our tribal equals, normally a world apart, was both a rare and beguiling opportunity. Sheathed in a chitenje, a sarong to protect my modesty, I joined the gaggle of women preparing supper on a reed mat. Plucking a still warm chicken, they spontaneously broke into peals of joyful song. I responded with a tuneless round of Under the Bramble Bushes Under the Sea. A fit of giggles later, I knew we had bonded. 48 hours later, and I had practically chained myself to the bamboo fence, willing the villagers to take me on as an apprentice. Looking back now, my diary beggars belief. Tuesday, I hauled water on my head, spilling more than I saved. I learned to strip maize kernels and swapped candlelit tails over a meal of boiled ground nuts. At dusk, I took a stick and scratched an unlikely map of the world, highlighting the extent of our journey to a chorus of sighs. Trailed by his pack, George appeared and reappeared momentarily, increasingly unkempt, Lord of the Flies style, his face smudged with sweat and dust. Dirt, he enthused. I like dirt. Wednesday, we got a peek inside the primary school at rows of enraptured students aching to ask, "How old are you?" A daunting girls-only ceremony saw me under the scrutiny of a traditional singanga, a healer. Knocking on 90, she was wiry, innocent, and had a smile of irresistible charm. Her diagnosis was frighteningly accurate. Her herbal cure unimaginably vile. The evening collapsed into revelry as George and I danced a dubious chitalele alongside bottom-jigging naturals way out of our league. Our accommodation for those nights was a simple Rondeval mud hut, a screened-off tin bath took the place of our regular ensuite. No electricity, no cutlery, no flushing loo, no telly. Any doubters among you will be gagging to probe the shortfalls of a village stay like this. So insignificant may seem the tokens of modern-day comfort, even basic reassurances for visitors. Fair enough. Buzzing through a clouded Simpsons sky, on board a mini aircraft, destined for a shaky landing on a duvet-sized airstrip, had seemed less than comical. Clicking our legs into reverse as the quick-witted villagers stoned a random spitting cobra, even less of a laughing matter. On balance, though, the chance to exchange life experiences with these vanishing tribal people, to build a rapport with the incredibly hospitable villagers and participate in their day-to-day lives is far too good an offer to miss. As late as the 18th century, the people of Zambia had hardly any contact with non-Africans. It was the arrival of David Livingstone that broke Zambia's comparative isolation. At Webby's, on the day we arrived, the screaming toddler had thought we were ghosts. George played the 21st century envoy, charming the ever-intrepid youngster with tic-tac-toe scratched into the earth. Harry Potter's Game Boy Advance doesn't come close.
Our next piece is Visitation Ends by John Maliwacki. John Maliwacki hails from Binghamton, New York. He is a retired science teacher, having delightedly corralled 8th graders for most of his career. Occasionally, he's been driven to write a poem or song, often in times of agony or elation. Having read about Write Out Loud, John submitted a couple of his poems on a whim. He was delighted when one was chosen and terrified to be revealing something that had always been so private. He would like to thank his sister, Marty, for coming with him in support, or, if necessary, to drag him to the stage.
I made it up here all by myself. My children go to their mother's van. It engulfs them like some monster with 4 horrible mouths. I call out, "I love you." My youngest waves, and my son says, "Goodbye, Daddy." Goodbye, uttered breezily so often, rarely ushers such malevolence. She buckles them in, their mother, my former lover, my wife on paper only now, wearing her armor, impersonal, indifferent to my fate, saving my children from me. She drives away, the road swallows them. I watch them disappear down its throat, and they are digested by the horizon. Surrounding me, depressions in the parking lot's asphalt turn to puddles. My little daughter is no longer here to dance in them, splash, and giggle with an infectious joy to make my heart smile. The shiny mirror surfaces ripple only as each cold raindrop hits. Stratus clouds graying the entire sky cry for me, for the paltry volume running down my cheeks is far too slim a measure. I offer myself to my car, monstrous in silence. Imbibed, I turn the key, but the motor's monotonous hum is lifeless, where echoed the cacophony of my children, an empty din. I search for respite and turn on the radio. The speakers vibrate with music popular when I change classes by the bell. My oldest daughter's finger does not dart out to push button the old melodies away. I can listen to whatever I please, as loud as I want. The irony does not escape me.
Our next poem is Ella's String by Richard Braco. Richard Braco comes from Portico in New York. He was born in Fort Plain, just a few miles away from here. While serving in the U.S. Navy, he wrote for the Navy log. One of his recent poems appears this spring in the journal Prosetics. One of his recent poems another is coming soon in a collection called The Great City of New York.
I'm just waiting for the picture to show up. Oh, that's my daughter, Ella Grace. Hi, Ellie. I'm so glad she sent this picture to me. It shows to me how strong and determined she is at age 39 now. The poem I want to read is about her birth many years ago. At that time, they allowed fathers to be in the birthing room. I'm not sure why, except they told me I was to catch the baby when she came around. I was all ready to do that when the doctor kind of shoved me aside and said, "Give me some elbow room." And I said, "Well, why? What's wrong?" And he said, "Well, the cord's wrapped around her neck," which, is very dangerous. But as Ellie continued the birthing process, we saw that her hands were holding the cord, just like this, sort of like in the picture here. So I said, "Wow, that represents someone who has a will to live. She's so determined." So I said, "Great. That's the topic of a poem." So here it is, called Ella's Strength. My third daughter came from the womb with a practiced grip. The tightened cord slipped as I unwound it, and it fell from her neck. But still her fingers held, though the first breath heave released, unbent the arms. I caressed the curled fingers, still locked in their grip, as a weightlifter, groping for a bar, lifted long ago, remembers the steel. Thank you.
Our next poem is Portico by Cassandra Miller. Cassandra Miller is executive director of the Butternut Valley Alliance, a lecturer at SUNY Oneonta, and a freelance journalist based in Oneonta. She's also the editor of Townman, a Substack newsletter highlighting things in the area, which she uses on local life. Portico is one of the poems she wrote during the pandemic, on the side porch of her old apartment, reflecting on her years living in Italy after college.
Portico, porch. Portico, like a porch, only mostly in letters. Stroll under arches, past the cheese wheel sunglasses, stride over mosaics of men, proud to remain remains sunken in soil silt. Stilettos clack, clack, clacky, talkie, talkie. Whoosh of espresso, express, oh go, andiamo, dove, qui, qua, ci siamo, together for an aperitivo. Years later, on a porch, in a faraway land of homeland, 3 loves later, or 1, none, niente. Laying flowers at that time's feet, rosemary for remembrance, graffiti on a train passing by, swept into the sea like sand going back, sucked into oysters to be spat into pearls I wear to brunch.
Next, we have a collaborative poetry project called Winter, Spring, Summer, Harvest by Poets Among Us. Caleb Bigsby, Emma Dodici, Taylor Hochwald, and Kaiya Stafford. These 4 students, poets among us, will graduate from Pathfinder Village with a diploma at the end of May, and take their voice into the world. They have been a wonderful addition to the Gatehouse in Morris, and have read their favorite poems to the community there several times. Roseanne Westgate is honored to be part of their voices as they present their poetry to you this evening. First, we have Winter by Kaiya Stafford. Kaiya has always been a person of remarkable focus and creativity. Her academic journey has been marked by significant achievements, reflecting a lifelong dedication to excellence. Kaiya continued to expand her horizons through higher education. She attended both Syracuse University and Dutchess Community College, gaining a diverse range of experiences. Kaiya's life is enriched by her family and her artistic passions. She has clear plans. She is a self-proclaimed future cat mom. Kaiya is a talented poet, using her gift for words to express her perspective on the world. She also possesses a truly unique photographic memory, a special talent that allows her to recall information with incredible detail. When she isn't writing, she is likely listening to her favorite music, a true fan of the Backstreet Boys. This is a major milestone in 2025, when she finally saw them perform in concert for the first time.
This is called Winter by me. When I think of long winter days, I think about hot chocolate and fuzzy socks, quiet snow falling, and snuggling up with a blanket inside. On the outside, I can see through my mind's eye, envisioning a snow day with fun-filled days of ice skating, sledding, and snow tubing. I can hear laughter of children ringing through my ears. The woods are breaking out of the dusk. The trees are becoming shadows of the night, with the sun's last light shining over the meadow as it turns into night. As the silent snow falls underneath the starry sky, standing hand in hand with my lover watching the stars. He pulls me in close to keep me warm. He sits next to me and turns on the TV as the camera zooms out and pans out over the land. Moments later, the magical moment turns into dreams of loss and loss of presence and joyous laughter. Winter makes me think about the things that I am grateful for in life, especially when the holidays come around, giving and receiving, spending time with family and friends.
The next part of our year is Spring by Bigsby. Caleb is a multifaceted individual whose life is a vibrant blend of athletic discipline, creative expression, and an encyclopedic passion for cinema. Caleb has built a reputation for balancing high-energy physical pursuits with a rich, imaginative inner world. Caleb spends significant time in the gym. His commitment to weightlifting and bodybuilding demonstrates a high level of personal discipline and a drive to push his physical limits. Caleb possesses a unique and vivid imagination. He channels this creativity into poetry, using the written word to build worlds and express perspectives that are uniquely his own. Caleb is also a preeminent expert on the world of Disney and Pixar. Known for his incredible recall, he can discuss the intricate details of almost any film from these studios.
Jumping in puddles, a season of coming alive. Beasts are waking up and watch me in the forest far away from me. Jumping around and working out. I see Shrek kissing Chelsea Winter Z and Queen Elsa. They are helping me relax from having to escape from the fire in my dream. I get up, look out the windows, see wishing stars. Hear crickets whistling, I feel calm.
Emma is a vibrant individual currently focused on carving out her own path by attending college. She is dedicated to fostering her independence and expanding her educational horizons, building a foundation for her future. Emma is a dedicated athlete who finds joy and discipline through the Special Olympics. While she has a history on the slopes as a skier, her current focus and passion lie in gymnastics. Family is at the heart of Emma's life. She maintains a close bond with her loved ones, frequently traveling home on weekends to reconnect. She currently works as a hostess at Texas Roadhouse. When she isn't working or studying, you can find her immersed in her various hobbies. She is an avid creator who expresses herself through poetry, photography, painting, drawing, blogging, and various crafts. At home, she is frequently found in the company of her beloved dog, Snowball.
Summer by me. I noticed a house next to a lake. Geese honking for food by the water. Birds are roosting by the water. Fresh leaves and flowers. Imagine the silhouette from the fish jumping from the water. Summer is warm, birthdays, graduation, for times. Thank you.
Tyler is defined by his dedication to personal growth and his vibrant connection to his community. Tyler's life is anchored by a very large and close-knit family, a support system that has encouraged his many ambitions. At home, he is often found in the company of his very cute dog, Winifred. Tyler is a natural athlete with a deep-seated passion for staying fit and maintaining a healthy lifestyle. His discipline is most evident in his martial arts background. He has achieved the impressive rank of second Dan Black Belt in Taekwondo. Tyler also uses his experiences to create poetry, adding a creative dimension to his multifaceted personality. Whether he is in the classroom, at the bowling alley, or practicing his forms, Tyler approaches every challenge with the same spirit of determination and a commitment to living life to the fullest.
My poem is about Under Harvest Moon by Tyler Hochwald. It is autumn. The mystic moon villages on woodland harvest fields. The children go to sleep in their rooms. Summer guest celebration, and the songbirds sing away. Shows nature image as flowers and food. Time for supper. In the country lanes, falling leaves gracefully. Empty nests are left behind. Summer closes, so cold as the night. Red flame, a mysterious moon shimmering. Gentle wind. Spiritual, the inner world. That's it.
Next, we have a duo of short poems by Sinead Sharkey, I Have No Sharp Pencil, and No. Sinead Sharkey was born and raised in Ireland. She developed a love of poetry and the written word at the need of a mother who narrated life through songs and stories. Sinead is living her best chapter and writing again after many years in beautiful upstate New York.
I have no small, sharp pencil. I was taught to mark the pages with the small, sharp pencil, write thoughts small and neat in the margin, lean lightly so that when I had done my study and committed to memory, wisdom, and beauty, the lightly written words could be erased and another more worthy mind than mine could lay claim. No. If I must flip a table today, let it be the one where sorrow is served, the one that offered no seat nor left a crumb. If I must flip a table today, let all the dishes crash in thunderous noise, so that the whole village might hear my no.
Edward A. Dougherty. It's performed tonight by Briana and Ingraham.
Ask anyone. It never closes. It opens and goes on opening. At first, I wept every day. Then was surprised to realize I haven't thought of it in days. That opened a whole new ache. Later, I could look at pictures, even enter his room. Then, Halloween. Little zombies, tiny, precious mermaids. I pitched over the abyss. Donations in the millions flowed toward the grief of nickel mines, to the Amish families whose little girls were shot while in school. The families, in turn, shared the money with the killer's widow. I broke again when driving. A song came on I said I hated, but he replied bouncily, "Come on, it's great." He completed his whole argument, but turning it up and bobbing his head. It never stops opening. I thought it would end after the police, the lawyers, the hearings, and the trial. Then the name of the prison was a hot coal in my throat. All I had was my anger. What do others do? Bud Welch waited for his daughter's call, a call that never came. He drank and raged and wanted Timothy McVeigh to feel pain and really feel it. He says during that time he would have choked him to death with his own bare hands. But the execution would not bring back his daughter. Instead, he had coffee with Timothy's father in his upstate New York kitchen, a bond between them as men of lost children. It was hot, and for so long I lost the prints from my fingers. Words like justice or closure, words people use so easily, became like gum in my mouth, all chewed up without flavor, without meaning. My life had grown, and those ideas so small. After the grief-soaked years, marriage shattered, health ruined, Abigail had to do something else with her grief, her all-consuming anger, her 8-year lust for revenge. To her own surprise, she wrote to her daughter's murderer. It's not about that man anymore, or what happened that night. It's not a box. There is no closure. It is my life, and it goes on opening to new life, one so spacious it includes the chasm and the fire. And it includes more than that. I don't call it forgiveness, but it includes him and that night. It includes my son's picture. Even now, people say he looks like me. His mouth, I think, maybe his eyes.
Our next piece is Early Morning at the Pool by John Bullis, poet biker. John Bullis is the only poet biker living with the love of his life in a passive solar home on the banks of the West Canada Creek in the Kaiya Valley, some 30 miles north of where we are this evening. As a poet biker, the majority of his work reflects over 60 years of experience motorcycling the highways and byways across America. The piece he is reading tonight, however, is a bit different. This poem reflects a slice of life at his treasured home on the West Canada. It is entitled Early Morning at the Pool. He hopes you like it.
Good evening. As a poet biker, it's incumbent on me to share a slice of motorcycle life with all my audiences before I perform. So tonight, here it is. Never refuse a 30-minute motorcycle ride, because that 2 hours may be the best 5 hours of your life. Early morning at the pool. There's a snake in the skimmer, she said. As a matter of fact, I went to the pool to see for myself. And sure enough, it was there, draped back and forth over the sharp edge of a leaf catcher. I paused. Its rusty red scales shifted almost imperceptibly. Head tilted back towards the rim, pink frosting tongue flickering here, there. Minus action, it'd be a long, hot day before drowning in the faded aqua abyss. I reached down. Carefully lifting the leaf catcher, I spoke softly to the intruder. I'd invite you in for something to eat, brother, but she wouldn't have any of that.
Our next poem is My Mother's Beads by Dory Munch. It's read tonight by Joan Badgley. Dory Munch is an 83-year-old woman living in Oneonta who writes occasionally.
My mother's beads. The radio she kept on could not conceal the insistent buzzing sound as she stood at the stove or leaned over the sink, day after day, in moments alone. Words indistinct but urgent streamed from her mouth, swarmed, a dark, angry cloud around her head. Children passing the doorway stepped faster. Left to cope on her own during the week without a car and far from family, she was, for those mothering years, housebound. Bound to that kitchen sink and stove, bound to the clothes wringer and the ironing board, bound to the scrubbing, the mopping, the mending, bound to the tending of 5 children. On Fridays, in the big Buick, he came, the beekeeper, to stay the weekend, to claim his own, to collect the honey.
To close out the first half of tonight's performance, we have The Battle in the Bathroom by Chris Kiefer, read by Andrew Monroe. Chris Kiefer is the author of the Carrie Lisbon historical mystery novels. Her 3rd book in the series was a Killer Nashville finalist for Best Historical Mystery in 2025. The Battle in the Bathroom is one of 7 essays in her chapbook by the same name. Chris invites readers to visit her at www.authorchriskiefer.com. She lives in Schoharie County.
My husband invited company over, which meant I had to clean the bathroom. I've got lots of other things to pique my interest other than cleaning in general, and cleaning this specific room tends to fall to the wayside. The wayside. I can spit shine just about every other room in the house before company comes, picking up newspapers and slippers, tidying the dog bowl, running a quick vacuum over the rug, and hiding all the dishes in the dishwasher. But with an hour to go before our expected guests arrive, I suspect my husband has invited people over because it's my turn to clean the bathroom. It's only fair. I invited a football team over once when it was his turn to do the cooking. Challenge reluctantly accepted, I enter the fray armed with a canister of baby wipes, a World War II-era gas mask, and elbow-length rubber gloves. I start at eye level, because when I walk into someone's bathroom, my eyes fall to the mirror, the wall decor, and the towels a split second before I locate the principal piece of furniture. Best to get the big picture polishing out of the way. That way, if guests are anything like me, they'll notice the gleaming surfaces and not the sordid details. Except my mirror looked like it was coated with London fog. My walls were shaggy with cobwebs, and my attempt to decorate with fanciful starfish currently looked like the seas had dried up in an apocalyptic manner. It was easy enough to ditch the sorry-looking stars, but the spray can of glass cleaner spluttered out before I relieved the mirror of its grime, and the spiders proved to be quite disgruntled by my attempts to gentrify their neighborhood. Go figure. I let them live inside my house on the unspoken agreement that they'd take care of any flies or gnats that get in. I can't abide fly speck, and the spider's job is to eliminate the source. But the ungrateful arachnids not only welched on their end of the bargain, they've been depositing their own Jackson Pollock fecal masterpieces everywhere. Charming. As I swept them into oblivion with an old broom, I thought, next time, I'll make sure I get at least a verbal agreement before they start webbing over the shower. My cleaning motto, give it a spit shine, is now my battle cry as I charge into cleaning the floor. Real grunt work can only be done with elbow grease via bended knee. I'm hoping my guests will offer sympathy for the cricks in my back after this. I'd better get at least a complaint about how the dazzle of my faucets nearly blinded them. My bathroom surfaces are wood, porcelain, formica, and paint. I should just have to swipe everything down, but the beadboard and quarter-round trim we selected when we remodeled 10 years ago to make the room look old, country, and comfy now harbors dirt in a million nooks and crannies like an English muffin. Last time I cleaned, my husband asked, what happened to all the Q-tips? There are so many crannies, I complained. Crannies! The countdown to guest arrival is coming on fast. I still have to tackle scrubbing the shower walls, obliterating toothpaste splashed around like guano from a seabird colony, and at least one coffee cup melded to the countertop with shaving cream. I find a cheese stick wrapper hiding behind the laundry basket, and the desiccated remains of a fugitive sock that escaped from the dryer last winter. He didn't get too far. I'm almost out of baby wipes, my favorite ammo, and my knees are feeling the strain of holding that shield wall against the mold that's dug itself into the corners. Time to move on to the toilet. The bowl itself is pristine, thanks to the daily means to clean up after every main event. But the tank, the footing, and the wall behind it have always been neglected. That is, until company threatens. I gird my loins with a pep talk and several quick panting breaths and step into the no-man land of horror. In this valley of the shadow of stray urine droplets, I can hold my breath for at least 12 minutes while I wipe up dust along the curvaceous bowl and collect minute bits of Kleenex that pepper the ground. How does blowing one's nose tatter them into shreds? I find another cheese stick wrapper. I have to move on, unable to fathom who might be responsible for combining eating with elimination. Just as I allow myself the faintest glimmer of hope of finishing this job without serious injury and a vow to foist this task onto my housemate forevermore, my forward motion is arrested when I spot that most foul of man's hygienic creations, a serpentine shred of used dental floss. Oh! In my house, dental floss is only tolerable when it's in its original, hermetically sealed package and out of sight. I have to change the channel when I see dental floss advertised on TV, like it's a chainsaw scene from a movie. I can't look at the dentally perfect model baring her teeth to a length of that torturous invention of modern oral health. To me, it's a biohazardous medical waste tendril of grossness that stalks my conscience and haunts my soul after every encounter. I can feel myself shuddering with revulsion like a nervous little dog. We've talked about this. If dental floss is to be used, it must be discarded within half a second in the appropriate receptacle, namely the kitchen wood stove. This snake in the grass has not only been improperly disposed of, husband dearest missed the garbage can, and now it's stuck to the floor. I back away from the creature, considering the whereabouts of our shop vac, the pressure washer, and the flamethrower. I wonder how scrupulous our guests will be in their perusal of the bathroom. If I leave the thing, will its tail stick out from under the rug? Maybe I should pull the light bulb and pretend we have a power outage in that sector of the house, with the sound of the arriving car in the driveway. I have no more time to consider my options. The boss fight is on. If falling on one's sword is the ultimate act of bravery, handling this one end of this sticky, offending hank of two-string will be mine. I grasp the loose end with the barest of pincers, hoping the protective sheath of rubber hasn't been compromised in the melee. I debate quickly. If I do this slowly, I risk extended contact and will bear those scars for life. If I do this with a fast jerk, I risk a potential whiplash sting from the wildly swinging strand. I compromise speed for accuracy, with infinite delicacy and tightly closed eyelids. I turn my face away and drop the offending goblin into the toilet. Then I caper about in victory as it flushes away in defeat. Oh! After a disinfecting shower with soap used to contain Ebola outbreaks, I skip to the door to greet my guests. One of them has brought me a small bouquet. Another has brought a six-pack, and a third carries a delicious-smelling pizza. But all of them are guys. None of them brought their wives. And since the entertainment of this trio on this pleasant autumn afternoon will be held on the back patio, every one of them will avail themselves of the great outdoors, utilizing our 20 acres of trees, bushes, and shrubs to relieve themselves when the inevitable need arises.
Next, we have Immigrato by Roseanne J. West. Roseanne J. West has been writing poetry from a very young age. In college, she was influenced by Sharon Kramer's work as her English professor in 1975. She didn't realize at the time that Dr. Kramer album Whales and Nightingales by Judy Collins. This experience would influence the writing of The Natural World. Roseanne is an adjunct professor at Bartlett College in the education department. She incorporates her love of poetry into her literary classes. She is continually inspired by Mary Oliver, Lawrence Burlingame, and Langston Hughes. She sees poetry as the timeless expression of humanity. For the past 2 years, she's been teaching poetry to college students at Otsego Academy, Pathfinder Village.
It's a photo of my grandfather, who I never met, but I somehow feel I have. The picture was taken, 1945, right after the war. The young slender man came to the southern coast port by foot before his journey from one island to another. The passage to his new life would be weeks in steerage, potatoes and white bread tossed and shoved, filth and stench alongside his cabin mates with whom they spoke of the great hope they had. To land at the feet of the goddess with a torch, numbered and manifested. Welcome to La America. He arrived with a thimble his mother put on his finger when he was a young boy, wearing a brown jacket he made, with shiny matching pants, his well-worn shoes with a hole in the sole, attempting to disguise it with a piece of newspaper. One wooden box for a suitcase, one big dream. America would answer of opportunity, he was certain. He would learn English and how to swim, but never forget his first language, to stitch and baste from early in the day to when the sun melted the roofs of the brownstones, until darkness encircled him as he quickly raced home to his family, his footsteps heard above the quieting of the Brooklyn streets. His desire for a tailor shop, he would make the returning soldiers' tuxedos by hand and measure them with a long tape around his neck. After the war, they lined the streets in June to be fitted before their weddings. A camel stub in his teeth, the smoke thickening above his head, paired with the smell of benzene. On Sunday afternoons, he dressed in his best cloth, a pocket watch and a vest, holding his wife's hand in the side room at Carnegie Hall. Their daughter played minuet in G, and her fingers danced across the ivory on a baby grand. A small, quiet, yet audible cough broke through the room's heavy air. The vision was passed on to his family when he left them in the summer of 1950. Leaving a strong work ethic together with the blood he coughed up that August day on the terrace of multicolored slate. Thank you.
Next, we have Boxing Lessons by Robert Benson. Robert Benson was born and raised in the industrial city of Joliet, Illinois, attended the University of Illinois, moved to Oneonta in 1978, taught at Hartwick College for 39 years, and conducted a poetry workshop for Bright Hill Press. His seventh book, What Lightning Spoke, New and Selected Poems, appeared in 2022. His wife, Dr. Mary Lynne Benson, is a reference and instructional librarian at SUNY Oneonta. Their daughter, Anna Lee, a former dance professional with the Taylor 2 Company, lives in Brooklyn.
In boyhood days, fists sprouted everywhere. Roughhousing in a squirrel cage of fists. Fists bursting from a cartoon cloud of kids. The fists of recess, bullies after school, best to run my chicken legs the long way home. My dad resolved to take this lily liver to the Friday night fights downtown for an exhibition of the manly art of pugilism. Over her dead body, my mother snorted. But schooled was I where humongous cauliflower-eared has-beens and palookas plodded, floated balloon fists took their falls. Cigar smoke swirled, Budweiser sloshed, 100 fists pumped in the sudsy hullabaloo when anything like a punch landed. Thus was I trained to the ring, to master straight and cross, jab, jab here, jab, jab there, roundhouse, right hook and left, duck, cover, and slip. Then pound the speed bag like somebody's face. So stoked was I, high on Sugar Ray, Sonny, and Floyd, their dance, feint, backpedal, and lunge. This juvenile carnival finishes with me ambushed by the neighborhood gang from the diocese, out for whatever crimes the priest's pack of communion boys commit. Bare-knuckled fists, we slug it out, but I with finesse. Jab, jab, uppercut, then 1, 2, slip, 2, 3, slip, pound the stuffing out, 1, 2, 10 at a time. So what? Let them come. Let their bloody noses drip. Let their moms kiss their very, very fat lips.
Our next poem is The Red Bird of Ragmore, Cairn by Sally Pollock Zengel, performed by Andrew Monroe. Sally grew up in Cooperstown, which, you've got to admit, is one of the most idyllic small towns in this country. With a castle on the lake and another castle tucked up in the woods not far from her home, you would think she would have had many amazing adventures. Alas, she did not. She caught frogs in the pond and snakes in the grass, had dogs, cats, a horse, guinea pigs, and mice, crunched through skunk cabbage a time or two, and picked tiny wild strawberries that grew on the hill. When she grew up, she raised 8 children, and now has 6 grandchildren. She writes purely for the fun of it.
You wish to wed my daughter, lad? You're not the first to ask. I challenge you to prove your worth by performing one small task. 'Tis straightforward, but quite hard. She's my most precious bairn. To win her, you must bring to me the red bird of Ragmore, Cairn. This warbler wee with magic song has feathers ruby red, elusive as the unicorn, and more powerful, it's said. So I set off on this my quest to far off Ragmore, Cairn. I battled dragons, dodged wizard spells, my true love's hand to earn. I rescued maidens trapped in towers, hunted mighty stags, and on my journey shared my wealth with beggars dressed in rags. At Ragmore, Cairn, I searched and searched, but could not find the bird. My spirit low, I knelt and wept, when suddenly I heard the sweetest song that filled my soul. 'Twas Ragmore, Cairn's wee bird. As it turns out, this tiny bird is drawn to one small thing. Tears produced by broken hearts make the warbler sing. I wiped my eyes and runny nose, reached out a trembling hand, my tears still wet upon it, lured the bird to land. I gently placed the wee red bird inside the golden cage. I was ready now to take my love to its next stage. On valiant steed, I headed home, fought dragons along the way, dueled some villains, hunted stags, blah, 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 blay. The maiden of my quest had been removed to a bastion strong, a castle I'd never been to. I felt 'twould not be long. When that tall castle rose into view, the red bird sang a hymn. Then I saw the deep, deep moat. Alas, I cannot swim. There are many things that I would do to win a maiden's hand, but there's just one contingency. I must stay dry on land.
Next, we have Radicle's Spire by Tony Ward. Tony Ward of Delhi and Brooklyn sought to slip the workaday news for the life of the theater, toiling thereafter in construction, law firms, restaurants, and elsewhere. Slip one news, yoke another. He's written one novel and started another, earned a theatrical resume of which he's quietly proud, but is prouder still of his family, a wife, Cairn, who has lent buoyancy and stability to his craft. He's a consummate teacher, as well as the matchless mother of a 17-year-old son with a crossover dribble and a lightning-quick smile. Both offer this man gratitude and wonder on the order of Emily Webbs.
Driving past the roadside farm, sympathy. Surges, rusting machinery parked askew, their ranks having fallen out, a few dozen of them, half-ton trucks in a row, their hoods of varying once vivid colors, bright bonnets like the thoraxes of just dead flies, slowly losing their iridescence. The tractors and attachments are arrayed haphazardly behind and, as if left in disarray by disgust, are angled toward every point on the compass. Beyond is an impoverished thin stand of birches that borders the hidden river. Back and below this, the one whose surges inundate the hamlet of aging trailer homes festooned still with looping Christmas lights. Upwelling gastric floodwaters crest the rotting molars that grind their crowns flat each and every night from anger and worry. What was done at dawn to one I know well ought never be done to anyone, hell. The spire of a sapling spruce bore into by a weevil who within laid its eggs, stunted its upward growth, forever warped its naturally aspirant pointer. I know a few of their old names, threshers, tillers, harrowers, as if every kind of brute machine was brought here to bear on the desperate situation. Where's the goddamned right implement that will crack the hard-bitten soil's code? I know this effort, for it is ongoing and is desperate in me, and I get the temptation too, having tried just about everything, but not all, to leave off, give rust its due, to let the seeds in the arrel ferment in their rusting pitted hopper, a wisp of stunted green coiling from the kernel's end having given up. The Dutch patroons fooled me into coming, staying here too. But give me the pickaxe and give me pen. I'll dip my nib and think, drop my shovel in pulped wood, dig my worn molars till my jaw has grown too tired, till my teeth, like the sand-blasted worn maces they are, tongues ill savor, nightmares pulp pestled in this mortar, the night mind lashing at its whipping post, for the dawn's tines harrow their helpless host. The Scots-Irish were baited, then switched by the Dutch, enticed by favorable terms. Expense of spirit in a waste of shame, that's Hamlet talking. In it I hear the misdirected energy, the sweaty, gnashing, feverish industry required just to remain toe on the starting chalk. Sovereign entropy, degradation, and stubbornness with a potency so shocking, but that conceals somewhere within a seed, might be pushed by a thumb downward into the moist sphagnum of Psyche's realm. Even the rust will go blazing orange for a time, will please the rods and the cones, like only fall's deciduous can do, nutrients flowing back down from highest stoma to the deepest tendril stems off the taproot. The hope here sustains. The upward Energy withered by the weevil might go down enough into that rock-bound soil, and outward too, just as far as it would have gone skyward. Waiting springs yet employed hide richer minerals than those high-scaling species appear always to have enjoyed. Farther on, I pass the ramshackle by the water and think how rich those inside might be in spirit, to be poised at the elbow of the river like that, elder and younger man of nearing horizons, doing unhurried, unharried homework with, I fancy, some old recipe stew, simmering, venison, square roots, and pie are the menu. But I pray for him he can learn more of malehood than the lower shelves offer him, can buck the trend and sow self-cultured seeds in his native mindscape, offset the yoke on his frame will totter, baited into ranks, culture's mammon fodder. Still doing their reasonable best to stay simply afloat, to wring nurture out the land sufficient, wrestle from it at noble ease a living, heat having long ticked away from rusting, disused engines, resting desiccated nearby, their blue, red, and black bloods leached into earth fallow, under the thinning harrower's fingered tines, my soil's too stony, like here, shallow. I've been fooled by the verdure, by the Dutch, stratagems too. Dig here, they said, and after, they could barely squelch their rolling laughter. As flies to wanton boys are we to the gods. They would thrill us, then kill us for their sport. The undulate forbidding soil, pockmarked, with Scots-Irish aspirants tired and sear. Each thrust a rock barked at the searching blade, my own weary frame desperate to clear, metaphorically or of matter, a path for a root could slake itself here. And sympathy stock once propagated could reap itself, for it burns down to lees, might nourish the soil neath the wild god's trees. Beneath the towering evergreen spire, one whose spruce weevil early had stunted, would epiphanies rest from muck and mire, dowsing roots past igneous stones shunted, working the seams of some basaltic shoal, augur truths well deeper, to myths put paid. To have forged a frank and cathartic soul, hammer and tongs, till a new prayer's been made.
Next, we have Funny, the Things That Remind Me of You, by T.M. Bradshaw. T.M. Bradshaw is a founding member of the Stanford Library Writers Circle. She writes a monthly column, Catskills Past, for the Catskill Mountain Region Guide. Her work has appeared in 3 Sherlock Holmes-themed anthologies, as well as in Stone Canoe 19. She won the 2024 Black Orchid Novella Award, jointly given by the Alfred Hitchcock's Mystery Magazine and The Wolf Pack. Her essay on the theatrical relationship between Ned Buntline and Buffalo Bill Cody is included in the anthology Peter Pan and the Catskills, the first release by the recently reorganized Purple Mountain Press.
Tidying up in the bedroom recently, I decided to finally empty the school desk that had served as your nightstand. After all, you wouldn't be using any of it anymore. I blew the dust off a paperback of Mark Twain short stories that you had used to craft a script for a performance. There were also 2 quarters, a dime, 6 pennies, a half roll of mints, a comb, a few receipts, the newest 3 years old, and way in the back corner, something surface soft, inviting petting, but hard and firm underneath, the curve of its back ending in a long, thin, hairless tail. The rat. When I realized what I had grabbed, I laughed and then I cried. We had had such fun with that rat. Our first instinct had been to put that mysterious Christmas present in the fridge because it looked like a very large wedge of cheese. But it was too light. That much cheese would have been several pounds, so under the tree it went. When we opened it on Christmas morning, we were really confused. Why had Tricia sent us a battery-operated rat? Was it a comment on one of us? But maybe it was meant for the cats. When turned on, its red eyes blazed, its tail twitched, it emitted strange noises. Not at all rat-like squeaks, more like a tiny truck grinding its gears. And it described a crazy path across the floor, turning, crossing, and recrossing its route. The cats couldn't care less. Back into the cheese wedge box and into the closet. But months later, you started a new game. Preparing to go to bed one night, I pulled back the covers, and there was the rat. Very funny after the initial shock and scream. Well, maybe not so funny, at least not right away. I put the rat in my nightstand and announced that that was the end of that game. 10 days later, you reached in a drawer for a pair of underwear and encountered the rat. Gotcha. Except now it was my turn to worry about being ratted again. Each of us let plenty of time pass before the next hiding of the rat. I'm wondering now why we never named the rat. Ratting, like revenge, is a dish best served cold. It was ideal if the intended victim had stopped anticipating the discovery. And often the rat was hidden in a spot where it might languish for a few days before being found, making its reveal a surprise for us both. Taking a pot out of the cupboard, it might be occupied. Catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of your eye on the edge of a high shelf, guaranteed to make you jump before you realize what it is. Packing for a trip, what is that in your suitcase? Reaching for a roll of toilet paper from the 12-pack? You really should look before you grab. What did you need from your car's glove compartment? We alternated rat hiding for several years, but then the time between concealments lengthened and finally stretched to forever. Until just now, finding it in your nightstand, I had forgotten it existed. Which of us had it last? Had you been keeping it while deciding where to hide it? Or had I hidden it for you and you never found it? Either way, its resurfacing was a gift for me, a glimpse back at the lives we used to have, a way to rediscover you now that you're gone.
Next, we're presenting a short story, Matt Sheldon's last bestseller by B.J. Bauer. B.J. Bauer, or Vince if you know him well, lives in New Berlin, New York. He's mostly a writer of short stories these days, but he's had poems and plays shows, and is currently working on several speculative fiction and thriller books, as well as an audiobook anthology of his works. His short story, Soon, previously showcased here at Fenimore, won honorable mention in The Writers of the Future last December. Tonight's Matt Sheldon's last bestseller is a new work based on a much shorter flash fiction piece that won last May's Wild Atlantic Writers Award in Donegal, Ireland.
Drawing her gun, Officer Sarah Mitchell entered the Victorian home of mystery writer Matt Sheldon after receiving an anonymous tip of an armed man inside. Easing the front door to close slowly behind her, she held her gun at the ready as she carefully stepped into the dimly lit foyer and peered up over a banister, listening for movement. "Dispatch, Mitchell. Solo at 722 Maple," she softly spoke into her shoulder-mounted mic, peering cautiously around, then down hall. "Investigating possible break-in. Entrance unsecured. No sign of the owner. Proceeding further. Expedite a unit." With no creak of floorboards to draw her upstairs, She slowly moved down a hallway, peering into adjoining rooms, mentally mapping the floor plan to match the cursory assessment she had made while checking the perimeter outside. First, to her right, was a parlor with its pocket doors partially open. The room was dark and empty. A quick wipe of her flashlight revealed a hearth void of cinder or flame. High-backed chairs sat like dutiful sentinels, guarding sections of shelving that held floor-to-ceiling books. A thick Persian rug dressed the hardwood floor. Drawn drapes, which had blocked her view from outside, were framed behind a large mahogany desk. Its button-tufted chair looked like it had been pushed back in a hurry. She swept her flashlight down the hall, walking past amber-lit sconces that flickered like old gas lanterns. A modest dining room to her left was also empty. Its long, dark table with pulled-in chairs had a white lace runner with place settings, but no half-eaten leavings or poured wine. The room was dressed more for show, with unlit candles typical of a well-kept home, ready for the arrival of guests. Everything was clean and pristine. Further along the way, she passed a coat closet, a butler's pantry, and kitchen, all like the dining room, empty, clean, and dark. Where are you? Sarah thought, having expected Sheldon to be reading a book beside his hearth while nursing a brandy or a lit cigar. The man was nowhere to be seen, with no clues of what might have happened to him. Though the front door was unlatched, it hadn't been forced. Outside, there had been no signs of a breach. She saw what appeared to be movement behind a drawn shade, but that could have been just the trick of the walkway lights. Other than a lone dog barking in the distance, the neighborhood had been quiet and seemingly asleep. No moving cars, no passers-by, just crickets and an occasional firefly. The sound of paper crumpling and an almost repetitive ding of a bell near the hall's end startled her. "Hold it right there," a wheezing man said. She snapped off her flashlight and backed into the shadows. "Quit stalling," the voice said. Old it was, strained and annoyed. "Just get on with it," the wheezing man continued. Sarah approached the last closed door. "You've been stalling for hours," the man said. "It's what you do. It's what you always do. And quite frankly, I've had enough of it. You know how it's going to end, so get it done. I want this whole thing neatly tied up so I can make my escape just before the police arrive." You won't get away with this," she heard another man say. This voice trembled, stuttered. It was definitely nervous. Sheldon, Sarah thought. She'd heard him on podcasts talking about his award-winning mysteries. Victorian cozies. After having traversed the grounds in his home, she now understood why. The place was full of mystery and intrigue from the moment she'd stepped inside. "Write what you know," Sheldon had said, advice that other guest authors often repeated. She'd listened intently to them all, imagined herself as a writer one day, if she could only find the time. Raising a child on her own, working double shifts to afford a nanny, all too often left her drained, without the energy to scribble anything more than a few words on scraps of paper or to stare aimlessly at a blank computer page. She'd daydream and doodle on her desk blotter while taking calls or filling out reports. Bits and pieces of case files provided her with a wealth of ideas, one of which she could form the basis of a good, cozy mystery of her own. Throw yourself into your settings and characters, Sheldon had said. See the world from their point of view. Plot if you must, or write as you go, if that's what works for you. And don't worry about twists and turns, cliffhangers, or intrigue. They all reveal themselves in good time. All it takes is a keen eye to spot them and then fit them into the framework of a satisfying tale. Everyone has a story, he said. Write the one only you can tell. She'd read all his books, knew his writing style, his voice. The Matt Sheldon behind the door was fearing for his life. Need I remind you, the wheezing man said, I'm the one in charge. Call me the bad guy if you like, but remember that I'm the one pointing a gun at your head. Sarah's eyes went wide. She couldn't wait for backup. With a forceful push, she burst into the room shouting, "Freeze!" Matt Sheldon jerked towards her with a look of shock and surprise. He stopped clicking his typewriter keys with his left hand while holding an antique pistol to his head with his right. What's going on? Sarah said. The room was empty except for Sheldon, who sat behind an old wooden desk and an antique typewriter. A gooseneck lamp dimly lit the workspace. A side trash basket was overflowing, and crumpled balls of paper littered the floor. He looked weary, disheveled. He was barefoot, wearing a soiled T-shirt and well-worn jeans. He hadn't shaved for days. Don't shoot, he said, quickly standing, lowering his gun to his desk and stepping back. His silhouette loomed on the closed window shade behind him, explaining the vague shadows she'd seen outside. It's not what you think. I'm not crazy, he said. I just needed inspiration. He raised his trembling hands. Something fresh, something out of the ordinary, a twist, a surprise to tie everything together. After several bestsellers, I'd run out of ideas, he stuttered. So I called in the anonymous tip and threw myself into character. Perhaps too literally, he then giggled, before he went back to his Sheldon persona. But it worked. You're here. You've brought energy and suspense into the scene precisely where I needed it. Save it for the shrinks, Sarah said, as her backup arrived, and she pointed him to Sheldon. No, he said, struggling as they cuffed him. My story, my readers, you can't leave them hanging. Let me write, he pleaded. But she jerked her head towards the door, signaling the officers to take him away. Before turning off the light and following, she stepped over to the typewriter, read where he'd left off, looked up to make sure she was alone, and then began typing. Adding narrative details of her entrance just moments ago, she described her stealthy approach and folded in the subtle nuances of the house and its rooms, adding atmosphere and apprehension. Nodding to herself in agreement as she continued, she embellished the scene with tension and suspense, mimicking Sheldon's cadence and style. The story's climactic elements flowed through her fingers effortlessly. Everything revealed itself in clarity. The dramatic reveal of the character's split personality, his confession, and his struggle while being handcuffed and taken away. There, she said, removing the last page and placing it reverently atop his written manuscript. Matt Sheldon's last bestseller.
Our next poem is White by Cindy John, read tonight by Briana Ingraham. Cindy John began writing after a long career as a special educator. She found encouragement and writing friends in Murmur Bigsby's fiction workshop at the West Courtright Center in Delaware County, New York. Her beloved husband, Bill, has provided a listening ear and suggestions for her writing, as well as through education in World War II. A visit to the Dachau concentration camp memorial site inspired this poem. She took this photo inside the facility. She and her husband live in Treadwell, New York.
White. White like the rumpled sheets that concealed the disabled babies, wheeled away in laundry carts, never to return. White like the note cards kept on each citizen, filed away in order, their diseases, medical history, mental status, check, check, check. White like the walls of the medical clinic. Like tiny flowers on mountain slopes, shining and moving in the breeze. Like puffy clouds over Dachau on a blue sky winter day, as prisoners lay in snow, or as they bobbed in ice water, their deaths measured for science. Silver white winters. The nuns hold their thin hands over their mouths, their eyes watering. They know. White, silky parachutes that floated the 101st into Normandy. Some of them strangled the men in the water. Some of them were tucked into backpacks, marched across the French countryside, later to become dresses for brides. White, like the bedsheets of Pennsburg citizens hung out the windows to signal their desire for peace. White, like their faces as they hung from the trees.
A Murmuration by Margot Farrington, read by Robert Harlow. Margot Farrington is the author of 4 poetry collections, including The Blue Canoe of Longing, Dos Madres Press, and the forthcoming Collected Poems, 96th of October Press, due out this year. As a writer and performer, she has performed both nationally and internationally in venues in the U.S. and Wales, Great Britain, and France. This June finds her at the Hobart Women Writers Festival as a featured writer.
I'd love to perform a murmuration, but there's only one of me. You probably know that a murmuration of starlings takes hundreds of birds flying in different formations, making shapes in the air. The definition is a mesmerizing aerial display where starlings fly in intricate and synchronized patterns. Funny thing is, nobody understands or knows why they do that or how they decide to change shape. You can go on YouTube and just look for murmurations, and you'll see the most fabulous videos of these birds behaving this way. So even though no one knows why they do that, this poem supposes, Margot has projected as supposing that there is a goddess that thinks thoughts, and the birds are a kind of expression of her thought. So the poem dwells in both worlds. Blinked their own wink in their big eye, comprised of several hundred birds. They widened to a gaze grown deep and restless as a river, or rather the ribbon the goddess was making of them from her sky, where she trailed their texture over her thighs, intent on thoughts of her lover. Gathering in her fingers, the starling swirled again, the bow made of bodies attuned tight with the flock. Wine she had drunk earlier infused her with wild and shapely design. She recalled her goblet, and at once the birds fashioned it. Tasted melt of melon on her tongue. Gone was the goblet, quickened to a rind, curving the length of hedgerow, hovered over, then flaring, since she'd thought bell and fancied chimes altered from ringing to roaring. Birds pouring tone over bronze tone before reverse into, oh, a flame immense, born of each bird's body, stars, each one kindling every other. Meanwhile, no end to compass points drawn while they wheeled in their lower heaven, breasting the fields, settling, black as they banked toward landing, then lit gray gold, because the goddess, head thrown back, stretched and sought cloud couch, sighing that she and this flock might briefly rest.
Next, we have two short poems, including one haiku by Jessica Furlong, read tonight by Judy Greenberg. Jessica Furlong works in nature and with connection. Born and raised in the open skies of rural Iowa, she has also spent years wandering Louisiana, Virginia, and New Zealand. Winters and sunsets were so comparatively dark in the mountains of New York that at first it seemed the road signs were existential. Caution, hills block view. She now finds herself approaching 8 years in around Delaware County and has made peace and glues hiking the hills. She'd like to thank the Stanford Writers Circle for welcoming her and letting her know of this opportunity at Memoir.
Pawing, a haiku. Cats check their feeders like children at pop machines pawing for quarters. I sat with the snail. I sat with the snail as she smoothed along, saw movement in the flowers, and a sticky baby I would have missed had I not squatted, then sat to stay still. I went to press record to show, but I could not tell. The dance was not mine to share out, but only to share in. I then noticed the trails, white snot dots polka lining the concrete, translucent globular globes decorating our path with their iridescent past. The same with the remnant webs and wispy flower seed heads catching mizzle to make the tiny twinkling chandeliers hung from the raceme rafters of the border flowers, collecting white squinty skies from above and casting it back, glowing and bowing in the blurry abyss, lighting up the heads of this edge better than any artificial light, illuminating the morning, emerging from the mist by collecting it for itself, but also holding it up and out on display for all to see. For me, the trees, the swallows, and the snails to drink in before the day begins.
Blue Grazing by Joseph DeBona. Joseph DeBona is a baker who lives with his family in Acton along the Susquehanna River. He enjoys spending his free time working on carpentry projects, practicing guitar, and staying ahead of the current New Yorker, mostly. Last April, he started memorizing poems while setting up the next day's bagels, breads, and rolls. 2 years ago, he looked on as his dad recited the poem March, where the return of spring, or anything else once gone, is greeted with an open door and arms. Tonight, they are both sharing their poems amid this warm reception of folks, friends, and family.
Am I scared? Certainly. Do I fear the film's ending, as I've seen before? The release and regret after high slopes and pounding dope? Sure. I scry the chopped and stubbed blades of Kentucky bluegrass that once reached so high as to touch this azure sky. However, lately, they've been pruned by dull flail of an unholy thresher's spell. Here I wish you to grow a field, root wild and full of the insects and the worms and the bird shit, of honeybees and roots and weeds and all your every need. Let them rise and fall and die and call. Let me join in your many meadows, lay in them, smell the silent soil that speaks as loud as silty salted skin, and let me trod gently and joyously, and when I kick the crag of rock, stub myself on the jag of hemlock, I'll but only sustain a teardrop. At night, you shall always be at the mercy of the clarity of the void. However, the stars are there to reach toward. I cannot cover your whole plain, nor would it be of any use. In my better moments, I will try not to drain, yet I know I will unwittingly trample your plots of growing bluegrass, cut cords, and harm the unseen nature that so nourishes your soil and soul. Yet, I hope my presence in this fertile land of your love grows, and be one we shall never mow.
Our next poem, Where, is by J. Rogoff. J. Rogoff is the Poet Laureate of Saratoga Springs, New York. He has published 7 books of poetry, most recently, Loving in Truth, New and Selected Poems, from LSU Press. His collection of essays, Becoming Poetry, Poets and Their Methods, also from LSU, won the Lewis B. Simpson Award for Outstanding Literary Criticism. His first book, The Cutoff, published by the Word Works as winner of the Washington Prize, is a sequence of poems in the voice of a minor league outfielder. The copy is in the collection of the Baseball Hall of Fame library. He's reading his own poem tonight by way of video.
My name is Jay Rogoff, and my poem is called Where, W-E-A-R. Where. The birds wear air, and the fish wear water. Once we knew the soul wore matter, but now no matter, the soul wears down. The duckling's down lets it wear water in wearying weather. The weather wears the sun's fire that warms the earth in its wrap of air. Earth wears the moon, and the moon wears water, pulling the tides from their coastal harbor and wearing them down upon the sand, where the tides wear land, where we wore each other like winter clothing. We watched our breath, and into the ground we wore each other, honeymooners on a train, squabbling over the lower berth. Christ, how can you lie, my darling, naked, under cover in the winter, wearing earth?
Our penultimate poem this evening is Mosaic of Grief by Hannah Sprout. It's read tonight by Cassandra Miller.
The machines hum and I watch him, my father, silver hair spilling across the pillow, hands once steady, now tremble like wind over red rocks, like cliffs carved by desert time. He was the man who carried me through storms, who built laughter from scraps of mornings, who showed me that the world is heavy, but that love can be heavier still. I press my hand to his, and it is not enough. I know it will never be enough to hold back the tide, to save him from this slow unraveling, to shield him from the cruel arithmetic of flesh and blood and mortality. Utah waits, red rocks, cliffs, wind like an open wound, and it once saved me, and it will save me again after he leaves. But right now, he is my gravity, and my chest aches to watch him shrink under the weight of his own fragility. I remember fatherhood not as a posture, not as strength, but as tenderness, as stubborn care, as a force that carved worlds out of small rooms, that held me even when he was tired, even when life pressed him down, even when I did not see the cracks. My silver-haired daddy-o, jokes still linger, even though coughs and tubes, even through frailty, his dark humor, sharp as knives, telling me that even in weakness he remains whole, a mosaic of stubborn, luminous love. He lies there, chest rising, falling, like tides I cannot command, like desert winds over cliffs I cannot reach. And I am powerless, and the sorrow blooms, like a red flower breaking through stone. And I ache for him, for every moment he has ever carried me, for every time I saw him falter, and every time he stood anyway. His life, a mosaic, shards of joy, anger, courage, grief, and I trace them with my eyes, with my heart, and I weep, because I cannot put them together. I cannot grout the pieces in place. I cannot stop them from scattering. I cannot slow the march of hours, nor the inevitability of his leaving. Father and daughter, we're bound by a lifetime of silver hair, stubborn hands, small rebellions, dark jokes, tiny morning rituals, and I'm learning how to hold him even as the pieces slip through my fingers, even as I grieve him before he is gone. Oh, silver-haired daddy-o mine, I wish I could carry this sorrow for you, as you have carried me, as you have carried everything alive and fragile through this world's cruelty and beauty. But I cannot. I can only watch and love and tremble and hope that every shard of me, every fragment of devotion reaches you before the end. Utah waits, and it will save me. But right now, my chest is full of desert dust and hospital light and grief, and I am only here, pressing my hand to yours, whispering love, whispering memory, whispering hero, and knowing that it is never enough, and that is all I have.
The final poem of tonight's performance is Close of Day by Dan DeBona. Dan lives along the Susquehanna River in Attersee. He has been writing about his home, his family, and his particular place in that world for 45 years. He will soon join his son, Joseph DeBona, at the Atherton Free Library on the evening of April 23rd as they read from their work in celebration of National Poetry Month.
I would wish everyone the opportunity to sit in an open autumn woods and watch light withdraw and darkness come. Begin a half hour before sunset, then put your watch away. There will be no need to know minutes any longer. I will not try to describe the sensation I hope you feel of not anticipating the next moment, or of surrendering to the slow rotation of the world and a dimming that is too seamless to parse. The expectation to see something move, to mark an increment, will be a focus for a while, until a while becomes something you realize you will not miss. Small birds make their last good nights. The air changes, becomes no longer invisible. You feel the anxious tug of something ancient in you as you lose the last defense, sight. It has been such a subtle closing of the day, and you have been so patient to let it happen, tears almost come. It is about then that you regret not having allowed yourself the experience more often. This, as you decide to make your way back up to the house without turning on your flashlight.